I'm passionate about superheroes. In fact, I'm what you'd call a comic book geek, and I have been for as long as I can remember. That's me at age 10. Now, there's only one thing cooler than being a comic book geek yourself, and that's training your kids from an early age to become comic book geeks as well. That's my son, Raju, and he learned to say the word Superman long before he learned to say the words daddy. For me, superheroes are much more than capes, masks, and tights. They're the modern mythologies of our world, transcending race, religion, culture, and age, and speaking to us in the primal story of human imagination. I followed my passion for comics early on, back in the mid-90s, building a company bringing Western comic books out here to India and translating them into local languages. And I woke up one day and I saw, while I was bringing the best of the West to the East was going to the West. Characters like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh!, and Dragon Ball Z were becoming household names all across the world. Yet India, which had some of the most mythic stories the world had ever seen, was relatively small in comparison on this global conversation. I started to learn, just as I studied superheroes all across the world, that most of the greatest heroes came at a time of great social change. For example, all the Western superheroes really defined this theme of man versus science, and were born in the 60s at the atomic age and civil rights movement and Cold War. So characters like Spider-Man, X-Men, Hulk, Fantastic Four all get their powers from radioactivity or some sort of genetic mutation, speaking to the primal fears of that age. Similarly, as we looked at Japan, there was this larger prevailing theme of man versus nature. And it reflected this sort of imbalance the Japanese felt with the environment as a result of the industrial age. So you had stories like Akira, Godzilla, and Princess Mononoke that all touched upon these things in different ways. So I started to ask myself, what's the story of our generation? And it was very clear to me that no matter where you are in the world today, the story of our generation is the story of globalization. Never since Alexander the Great opened up the spice trade have we seen so much of an interexchange of ideas from East and West, marrying each other across blazing digital speed. Today's kids, they don't learn about history in textbooks. They have friends around the world on Facebook. And the generation that grew up watching Scooby-Doo is very different than the generation that grew up watching Pokemon. So if globalization is the story of our lifetime, now more than ever, India needs to engage the world with its great stories, bringing its unique philosophical worldview out to the world and start discussing it. So that's the passion of why I started my company, Graphic India. So I've gone around the country recruiting artists, writers, painters, and all across to come to work with us in Bangalore with one defining mission: to transform the perception of India from being an outsourcer to being a source, to really spark characters that transcend nationalistic borders and speak to audiences from Boston to Beijing to Bangalore, but are unique because they tap into India in a unique way. And of course, the first story that we wanted to tap into was probably the greatest myth of all time, the Mahabharata. This is the kind of image from a Mahabharata I grew up with as a kid, and I loved them. But I really wanted to present a vision of the Mahabharata that would make people's jaws drop around the world, that would show it for the visual spectacle that it truly was. And this is our version of the Mahabharata, called 18 Days. Again, speaking to globalization, it was about bringing creators together from East and West. So the writer of Batman, Grant Morrison, working together with acclaimed Indian artist Mukesh Singh to really create something that spoke to people wherever they were. To me, the Mahabharata is Lord of the Rings plus Avatar times 1,000. Long before James Cameron created Avatar, we were the country that had the first blue-skinned hero with a bow and arrow. And we recently launched the series as well as a digital series, as a digital animated series on YouTube, led by another amazing Indian artist named Jeevan J. Kang. And the series had over 2 million views in the first couple of months. And the most amazing thing about that was most of the views and most of the people watching it weren't Indian. They didn't know anything about the Mahabharata. They just came to this story because they wanted to experience it as a great epic, which proved our theory that our stories, our culture, our themes can speak to audiences worldwide. And now I just want to share with you one more project that we're working on right now, which is, a personal passion to me. I think now more than ever we can see that, India is in need of a great, strong female superhero to inspire young girls all across the country to become anything they'd want to be. So I'm proud to announce here that we're going to be launching the Girl Power Project all across India next year to create a nationwide event where we ask girls all across the country to participate in the creation of a superhero that reflects the values, attitudes, and stories they would like to see and brings attention to women's issues and advocacy and tries to promote social change. So I just want to show you a quick video that illustrates this power and purity of imagination when we just ask kids the simple question, what kind of superpower would you like to have?
मेरा नाम सबरीना है। मैं 12 साल की हूँ। मैं चाहती हूँ मुझे ऐसी शक्ति मिले, मुझ में ऐसे पावर होने चाहिए, मेरे अंदर ऐसे पावर होने चाहिए कि मधुमक्खी की तरह उड़ूं और बहुत सारा शहद इकट्ठा करूं। Once I hug a tree, nobody can cut it down. जो भी सड़क पे सोने वाले लोग हैं, अपाहिज लोग हैं, जितने भी बच्चे हैं, जो लोग बीमार हो, जिनको हॉस्पिटल में इलाज नहीं मिलेगा, उनको मैं हाथ लगा वो एकदम ठीक हो जाए। जो भी दुनिया में बच्चे नहीं पढ़ते हैं, मैं उनके लिए एक स्कूल बना। जो भी भूखे लोग हैं, उनको मैं खाना खिला सकूं। मैं ऐसे हाथ करूं तो झोंपड़ा टूट के और मकान बन जाए और मेरा नाम दुर्गा। जो अभी मैं गार्बेज देखूँ वो गार्बेज गायब होना चाहिए। सूखे हुए पेड़ में उनके ऊपर ऐसे हाथ फैलाऊं, उनकी बाहर वापस आनी चाहिए। जिस बंजर खेत में जाऊँगा फसल ही फसल हो और मेरा नाम अन्नपूर्णा। जिन्हें वो फैसिलिटीज़ नहीं मिलती हैं, मैं उनकी दिल की बात जानूँ और उनके बहुत सारे सपने पूरे कर सकूँ।
Now, let me just close this by saying, to me, great superheroes don't have to just reflect society. I believe they have the power to change society, to inspire us. The next J.K. Rowling, Steven Spielberg, Stan Lee, or Miyazaki is sitting somewhere in this country, ready to transform the world with their stories. So I ask you to join me in sparking a creative renaissance in India, where we promote creativity and imagination as much as we promote science and engineering, where we ask kids to dream bigger and to imagine greater. Because the rise of the Indian superhero has just begun. Thank you.